Hello! So what separates beginning photographers from more experienced photographers? Composition. That's how the elements of the photograph are laid out on the frame. So today we're going to talk about leading lines, rule of thirds, and framing. Alright, rule of thirds, so what that is an invisible grid that separates the image into 9 equal sections, with 2 invisible lines vertical and 2 invisible lines horizontally. And what you usually want to do is place that subject along those lines, whether horizontally or vertically. And the most interesting parts of those images you'll want to have at the intersection of each of those points. Alright, take this image of this plant. The stem lines up right along that vertical axis, with that intersection being right at the most interesting point of that image. Typically with portraits, you want to have the eyes to be right along that vertical or horizontal axis, because that is the most interesting point of the image. You usually communicate best with your eyes. Take this image of the Mad Hatter. She's placed along the left side on that vertical line, with a lot of space on the other side. That gives context for the subject. It allows them to be placed within the background of the frame. Alright, so take this image for example. We have the subject laid out on that vertical line, with the intersection points being at the eye and the tip of his fingers. Take these street performers, for example. They line up again right along that vertical axis, which again makes more and more pleasing shot. Another key element to composition is leading lines. What leading lines are elements within the frame that create lines going toward your subject. Going back to that street performer image we had up earlier, leading lines within this image would be the cobblestones, the umbrellas, and then the buildings themselves all lead to the street performers as a subject of the frame. Take the image of this spiral staircase. The railing acts as a leading line to bring your eyes up throughout the image. A lot of times leading lines will lead to a vantage point. In this case, those railings lead to the top of the stairs. Leading lines will often involve symmetry as well. Usually with the lines, drawing your eye right to the center of the image, right where usually the subject is placed, making more for an interesting subject. For this photograph, clearly the guy in blue is our subject. We have leading lines with the train tracks, as well as the path that he walks on, all drawing your eye toward him. So the last element of the composition we're going to talk about is framing. Framing is basically taking elements that are within the photo to frame the subject of that photo. Typically think of it like a photo within a photo. So take this image for example. This rock formation on its own is a beautiful image, but that's basically all that's in this image. To add a little more interest, if you take that rock formation, shoot it through, let's say, some tree branches and have it frame that, it adds a completely different feel to this image. With framing, a lot of times not only will it give context to the subject, but also it tells you how the image was taken. In this case, the photographer was actually on a train, and they used the window of that train to frame the element, which in this case is the sunset. So in this case, blurring out the locks in the foreground adds more interest and frames the subject that is there in the background. This image actually follows all 3 of the elements we talked about for composition. We have the framing. The fence itself frames her body and her face. We have the leading lines from the fence itself, drawing your eye to her, and she's positioned on the left side of the frame, following that rule of thirds. Ultimately, rule of thirds, leading lines, and framings are just some of the elements of composition that we talked about today. There are many more, but these are guidelines. They're not absolute rules. Sometimes they are meant to be broken. Sometimes you have a subject that they don't work for, and that's okay. That's what creative freedom is. So go out, have fun, photograph, enjoy. Thank you for watching my video.